Today's story is about Joanna, the wife of Herod's steward, which makes her a very interesting person to have been among the followers of Jesus. She must have been remarkable. She traveled with Jesus and the disciples. Luke tells us she was with the women who went to the tomb. That means she was also among those who first experienced the good news of Easter. This story, however, imagines a newspaper interview the afternoon of the crucifixion. She was preparing for the difficult but loving task of preparing the body of Jesus for its sleep in the tomb. Yes, I know, there were no newspapers at that time, but this is just an imaginative way of looking at Joanna. The basket over Joanna's arm swung with every step, slapping her hip in a regular rhythm. The fabric from her cloak dragged just a little on her shoulder. There was a tiny rough spot on the left side of her sandal. Today her senses were aware of everything. Maybe it was easier to think about those things than anything else. "Excuse me," a woman's voice said. "Is your name Joanna?" She swung round and saw a woman with an eager expression on her face. "Yes. Have we met before?" "No, it's just that someone pointed you out, and I wanted to be sure I was talking to the right person. I mean, you are the Joanna who is married to Herod's steward, right?" "That's me," Joanna answered, wondering what the pitch would be this time. She'd lost count of how many attempts there'd been to win her help in influencing her husband to, in turn, influence Herod. It was women who often talked to her, though a man was generally behind it. Well, there'd been a few who'd hoped to win mercy or aid for a husband or a child. Joanna had never minded the cases of desperate need. But those with political agendas, well, it was harder to find patience for those. "I was hoping to get an interview with Herod," the woman said, "but I can't seem to get through on regular channels, so I wondered if maybe you could help." "You're a reporter?" The woman's face reddened. "No, but I want to be." Now this was new. Joanna appreciated the idea of a woman breaking out of traditional roles. There had been many things she'd appreciated about Jesus, and among them was how he'd really talked to women and considered them as worthy as men were in following him. Jesus, just thinking his name sent a sharp pain through her heart. Shaking herself, she turned her attention to the woman who was staring so hopefully at her. "What's your name?" "My name is Sarah, daughter of Zelophehad." That explained it. The scriptures told about the 5 bold daughters of a long ago Zelophehad. This young woman had probably been inspired by them. "I'm sorry," Joanna said, albeit regretfully. "I don't get involved in official affairs of that kind, or I'd never get anything else done." It seemed kind to give some sort of excuse. "I'm sure a lot of people ask you for favors." The woman leaned forward. "That must be annoying." "I've grown accustomed to it." "Does it make you cynical?" "It used to, but then I met someone who, well, he taught me a different way of looking at people. But even so, I can't get you an interview with King Herod. Truthfully, he wouldn't pay attention to a woman, at least not unless she was dancing for him or doing other things." Sarah's brow wrinkled thoughtfully, and Joanna felt a sudden concern for her. "It's not worth abandoning yourself or your honor in pursuit of your ambitions, no matter how worthy they seem to be," she said. "What do you mean?" Sarah asked. "You know what I mean. I've seen it through the years, both men and women who think they could just do whatever has to be done in order to get what they want. How else can a woman achieve something in this world? It's no good if you sacrifice your soul. There's a story about a man who keeps building bigger and better barns to store his belongings, but what good did they do him when it was time to meet God?" That had been one of the stories of Jesus. He told so many. Some had been almost shocking. At the same time, they were wonderful portraits of God and of the Spirit. The young woman's eyes didn't reveal much. "Could you at least give me a few minutes? Readers might appreciate your point of view." "Unlikely," Joanna told her, not wanting to raise her hopes. "Most people don't seem to care what a woman thinks." "It would be different for someone in your position. You know what's going on. But I also don't give inside information about what happens at Herod's court." "No, nothing like that. It's just that I've heard you were acquainted with that man Jesus who was crucified this morning." Another shaft of anguish. Joanna swallowed carefully and controlled the urge to cry, helped by years of practice at hiding her true feelings. "Yes," she said, "I knew him. In fact, I've been shopping for herbs to prepare his body. That is, if we're allowed to do that for him. Oh, you will. I heard that Joseph of Arimathea went to Pilate and asked for the body. Pretty gutsy to link himself with a crucified man, don't you think? He's going to give his own tomb for Jesus. Well, that's awfully good of him. I was thinking it seems kind of strange you shopping for burial herbs and spices. Your husband is an important man. Don't you have servants who could do that shopping for you? Of course I do, but I couldn't send someone else. I wanted to do this for Jesus myself. Sounds as if you knew him pretty well. He was special to all of us. How many of you were there who hung around with that guy? It's hard to say. Joanna hesitated. It seemed unlikely that there would be a hunt for the followers of Jesus, but she wasn't about to give them any names anyhow. At the same time, she really wanted to talk about Jesus and what he had meant. It would be terrible if he was forgotten. There were sometimes 70 or more of us, she said. Someone told me you contributed money to help keep things going. There were a number of us who gave what we could. Everyone shared in the work, and the most amazing things seemed to happen. There was a rumor that he once fed a huge group with only a little bread and fish. Joanna laughed as she remembered that day. I never figured out if it was a miracle of math or a miracle of sharing. It didn't matter. Being with Jesus was what made the difference. Well, how did you meet? I was very ill, and he healed me. Yeah, I heard he was known for healing, so that wasn't just hype. He could heal the body, but he also healed the spirit. Even if he hadn't made me healthy again, that would have been enough. You make him sound like a really terrific guy, but wasn't there something just a little questionable about him? He hung around with some awfully dodgy characters, spent time with tax collectors, so weren't there some shady women involved at times? He cared about people. He didn't judge them. He just talked about forgiveness and new beginnings. I admit it was hard to get used to his ways. Many of the people you met around him didn't follow the rituals, mostly because they were working folks and there's no way they could afford to do it all. But after you got to know them, you realized that they were human beings and that God cares about them too. Well, that's a nice thought, Sarah said, and it's okay if you don't have to spend too much time with the great unwashed of society. Joanna sighed. You think you're being clever, don't you? Same as some of the reporters that you may have read in the newspaper. Well, sure, some of those folks couldn't do all the cleansing rituals, but Jesus taught us that it's the things that we do, such as helping others, that's more important than how we wash our hands. He sounds dull, but he never cracked a smile in his life. And you'd lose that bet, Joanna said, because Jesus smiled and laughed. He told jokes. He enjoyed life, and it was so fun to be with him. But it wasn't some dull preacher that raises another question. I heard he was a guy who liked a good time, including, wasn't there a certain woman who traveled with you guys? Mary, I think, from Magdala. She was in Jerusalem just today. Magdala is a pretty rough place, and a lot of the people from there aren't exactly the goody two-shoe types. I know Mary. Jesus healed her as well. You're the wife of Herod Stewart. You've got a high position, and you actually know a woman like that? So is she what some people say she is? Joanna almost wished she hadn't given in to pity for Sarah, who seemed eager to get anything for a story, even salacious gossip. I don't know Mary's past, Joanna said firmly. It never mattered. She's a bright young woman who loves God. Sure, but wasn't there something that went on with her down in the red light district? You know what I mean. Just what kind of story are you looking for? Joanna demanded. The sort of thing readers enjoy. What newspaper are you trying to write for? Well, my best chance is to get into the Israel National Enquirer. Joanna sighed. No wonder you ask those kinds of questions. All they're interested in are scandals and two-headed cows. Oh, that two-headed cows thing, that was a good story. And don't tell me the article about the goat with the green milk wasn't interesting. I saw that milk myself, and it really was a little green. I'm sure it was. Then why don't you write that sort of story for them? There aren't any scandals to report about Jesus. Now, the editor told me his readers are tired of hearing about Herod and his ex-wife and his new wife who used to be married to his brother until he lured her away. Well, I had some fun with his stepdaughter doing that veils dance in front of him, especially since she's also his niece. But it's old news now. They need something fresh. So I thought I might have a chance if I could get something juicy. You won't get it from Jesus, Joanna said. He was as straightforward as they come. He never did anything wrong. Then why was he crucified? For a moment, Joanna's throat tightened until she could barely breathe. All people died eventually. It came with being born. Jesus wouldn't have been able to avoid it. But it shouldn't have been from old age after years of teaching and loving and helping people, not this crucifixion. I think, she hoped she'd be understood, I think Jesus was crucified because he was good. The world sometimes doesn't like people who are that good. He was too honest, and anyone who is bad knew that his goodness would catch up to them, maybe even change them. So, do you want to tell me who you think is the worst? Now, that would be a scandal the readers would love to hear. No, I don't, Joanna said. Jesus taught us we shouldn't judge. Have a heart. The editor said he might give me a chance if I could get the story. Well, to tell you the truth, David is my brother-in-law. Well, I'll have to admit he's been acting a little weird lately. Okay, ever since he was at the temple and heard this Jesus talking. So I'm not sure what David wants. Maybe he wants is what we all wanted from Jesus, to change, to make our lives more meaningful. I don't want to change. I'm practical, and I'm realistic about the world. It sounds as if this Jesus wasn't. Besides, what does it matter now? He's dead and even has to borrow his tomb. It still matters. I know it does. But I need something more than this for an article. Tell the facts. He was all about truth and kindness. We knew God better in knowing him. We knew ourselves better in knowing him. Good grief. He was just a carpenter. Being a carpenter was his job, Joanna said. That wasn't who he was. Then who was he? Joanna frowned. The funny thing is, we were still trying to figure that one out. Mostly he asked us to decide. Well, what's your best guess? Some people called him the Anointed One, but he wasn't like the Messiah that the Scriptures talk about, and he wasn't at all like what people seem to expect from the Messiah. Well, that's for sure. My brother-in-law says Jesus wanted people to love their enemies. I always thought the Messiah was supposed to come and kick our enemies to pieces. Joanna glanced at the sun, checking the time. It was getting late, and she had to be inside before sundown. Look, I have to go. Please tell only the truth about Jesus. He deserves that. If I wrote everything I've heard about the guy, people would think I was lying. They could easier believe in a green cow, blue milk, and a three-headed sheep. Did you hear that he even forgave the Romans who crucified him? Well, maybe that's the story. The story is that he was nuts. If he was crazy, Joanna said quietly, then it's too bad that the rest of us are sane. The end, but not really. Amen.